And Kenya, a lot like many African countries, is a country of contradictions. This is a familiar image we've seen, and it kind of shows we have this abject poverty. It's a clear lack of access to basic resources, and in this case, it's water. On the other hand, we've got this image of wealth and opulence and development. This is Nairobi, and it's often not an image that you see in international press, in our images of what Africa should look like. So this dichotomy never really sat well with me. In Nairobi especially, we're seeing a tech boom, a technology boom. And what does that mean? Kenya now has 5,000 kilometers of fiber optic cable all over the country. We have, out of a population of 40 million, we have 30 million mobile phone subscribers. We have 50% of our population have at some point accessed the internet. 30% of our population access the internet more than once a day. So, I was working in this technology corporate sector, and I was seeing our poster child, mobile banking, the poster child of innovation and mobile technology in Kenya. And I've seen that we have every day $20 million, over $20 million being transacted on mobile phones every day. What does that mean? That means people are sending money to their grandmothers, they're paying their phone bills, they're paying electricity bills, they're paying school fees, all through the mobile phone. So this dichotomy, again, didn't sit very well with me. And one of the things that I was passionate about, other than technology, was education. In my spare time, I used to run a community-based organization, and I dealt with underprivileged children, and I'd see the way they learned. And I adapted this concept of funucation. And I saw that children learn when they're having fun. And it was as simple as that. But why are they not having fun while they're learning? In 2003, our government made primary school education free, and that was a brilliant initiative. We've since then achieved almost universal enrollment, and that's the good news. However, I wasn't convinced that our children were learning. So I got a little bit more involved in some of these children's schooling, and I met their parents, met their teachers. I stepped into a classroom one day that looked a lot like this, and actually, it looked a lot like this. And this is a classroom about half the size of this room. There are 4 classes in there, divided by blackboards, 4 teachers speaking over each other, and about 100 students in that room. So the class that I happened to step into, it was a science class, and the teacher wrote the word germination on the board. And I said, oh, okay, this is going to be fun, this is interesting. And then she wrote the word seed underneath it. And she said, now class, when you see this word germination in the question, you look for this word in the multiple choice answers. And I said, no, that's not right. That's not even rote memorization of facts. That's rote memorization of how to answer multiple choice questions. And yeah, that's not right. That's not what children should learn in a country that depends largely on agriculture. So there was this question that what is learning? What is teaching? Is lots of schooling and lots of teaching the same as lots of learning? I don't think so. We had a study done by Uwezo Kenya, and they did a survey through thousands of schools all over Kenya and Uganda and Tanzania. And some of the statistics they found were worrying. They said that our national student-to-teacher ratio is 45-1. In some areas, it goes up to 60 or 70. They found that after primary school, 40% of our students are dropping out. And we hear these statistics, but we don't often ask ourselves why. Why are students dropping out? And if you analyze those statistics, we see that girls are dropping out more than boys. They're dropping out around the age of 11 to 13. And, it's easy to say, well, let's focus on girl education. But, if you think about it, that's when girls start to menstruate. And that's when they feel that, I don't know how to deal with this, I'm just going to sit at home for 2 days. So it's missing 2 days, 3 days of school every month. Over a few years, that adds up. And the girls fall behind. And eventually they say, well, forget that. I'll do something else. Why else are students dropping out? One, maybe perhaps because secondary school education you do have to pay for. The second reason is proximity. There simply isn't a school nearby. And sometimes it's the fact that the opportunity cost is just too high. Parents are saying, actually, look after those cows instead of sitting in that classroom and wasting your time. You're not learning anything. They're not seeing the value in that education. So I thought it's time now to match the gains in quantity with quality, the quality of education. Let lots of schooling, lots of teaching be the same as lots of learning. And how do we do this? Whenever we think of the education problem, there's 3 ways we can approach it. One is a school-centric approach. Let's build better schools, better facilities, better administrative functions. Or let's take a teacher-centric approach. Let's train better teachers, better role models, better instructors in the classroom. And the third approach, for some reason, globally, is often ignored. And that's a learner-centric approach. Let's get these learners involved. Let's get them to say, wow, I nailed that math sum. I know I'm a dork, so I don't know if anyone else relates to that. Let's get them to say, that's interesting, and I want to know more about that, and I want to tell other people more about that. And how do we do this? And that's where something called eLimu was born. And I said learning should be fun. When I think about it, learning is fun. Rote memorization isn't fun. But when you're truly learning something new, that's an empowering feeling, and it is fun. So how do we get these kids to learn? So what we did was we took the basic content from Kenyan government-approved textbooks with covering all the topics of our curriculum, and we said, let's put it into a format that's engaging for children. And we got this little tablet. And we added animations and games and videos and songs and music. And we said, if kids have this in their hands, maybe they'll enjoy learning more. And it can be cheap, it can be affordable, so high technology, but low cost. And this is how it looks. When a student logs in with their username and password, they see all the content for their curriculum on one side, and then they've got quizzes and games and news specific to where they are in the country. Stories, fictional stories written by African authors, really good for cognitive thinking and analytical skills for kids. We've got exam tips on how to perform well in multiple choice exams. And for teachers and parents, we've got a teaching aid and a parenting guide. Within the subjects, there's images, there's videos and animations. If you think about something like the solar system and how you were taught that, if you were just to read in black and white ink in a poorly lit classroom how the solar system works, that would be a hard concept to wrap your head around. If you were to see an image, that helps. If a teacher was in the classroom, running her hands around, that helps too. But an animation is something that helps grasp complex concepts. Then we've also got quizzes. If you think about a textbook, we kind of give them to children. We don't know, A, if they're going to read it, B, if they're going to benefit from it. But from this, we're really seeing which students, what are they performing well in? What are they struggling with? And we can see this student, this class, this county, or our country in general is not really understanding the concept of fertilization or of long division. And if we look at these questions and we say, quiz number 4, question number 6 is consistently being answered wrongly, we don't need another textbook. We don't need to publish a new textbook and print it and distribute it. We immediately push new content onto the tablet. And then we've got feedback. And education is something we always think of as a one-way street. But it's not. We recently released our science content, and one of the students said, well, my teacher told me to remember the colors of the rainbow by this little idiom. And it was so helpful. And it was something that we didn't know, and the other kids also loved. And then we said, beyond what's in the curriculum, there's other lessons we need to teach our children. Lessons about environmental consciousness, about social justice, about civic rights, human rights, about personal financial literacy, something children go through an entire education without ever knowing. And we said, let's throw that in there too. Let's make sure that we're developing and cultivating citizenship for the next generation. Let's make sure that we've got people who are ready to actively lead and take part in the economies of the 21st century. And why are we doing this? I think often, especially in Africa, technology is for the sake of technology, because it looks cool. If you take pictures of kids in those horrible classrooms using technology, it looks really good on a website. But we forget about the learning outcomes. And so that's one of the things that's always been at the forefront of my mind, like, why are we doing this? Are we improving their test scores? That's not the be-all and end-all of it, but it's very important to Kenyan parents. Are we improving their critical and analytical thinking skills? Are we improving their chances of coming up with an innovative solution of their own? Are we increasing their social and environmental consciousness? Do they realize that if someone's house is burning down next door to my house, even if he's in a different tribe, that should matter to me. And then what can I do about it? Are we improving their IT literacy? Are they going to be ready to work in the economies of the 21st century? This was one of the first times that I took one of the tablets out to our pilot school. And initially, just the two girls in the middle were in the picture. And every time I pressed the capture button on my phone, another head would pop into that picture. And eventually, the entire class was gathered around this tablet. And that was their first level of engagement, of just wonder with that technology. And we know that that's going to wear out. But that content, that culturally relevant content, has got to keep coming in. We know that students who learn about maths, I think the study showed that 30% of our students couldn't perform a sum like 12 divided by 4. But if you told the same students who couldn't do that, and we said you've got 12 mandazis, which are Kenyan donuts, and there's 4 friends, how many will you get each? Half of them got that question right. So we need content that students can contextualize and relate to. And there's so much to be done. We've just launched pilot programs, we've launched a project in a library, and we've got so much attention. We've been covered on CNN and Al Jazeera, and people from all over the world have been writing to us and saying, what can we do? I want to offer my services as a teacher. I want to offer my services as a zoologist, as a botany expert, as someone who can start content for you about digital citizenship. And we've been completely overwhelmed. There's so much to do. There are so many schools in Kenya. When we say equitable education, what does that mean? There's a kid in Nairobi who's got access to a smart board and a computer lab, and they can read all about how the heart beats. But there's a kid in Dadaab who has a teacher who's been through that same crappy education system and are delivering bad content. That's not equitable education. Sitting in a classroom doesn't make it the same. So we're saying that with this technology, all children can access the same information. And then the teachers can do what they're good at. They can sit down with kids and find out what's ticking their clocks and what's not, what they're interested in, what time of the day they pay attention, when they're switching off. Maybe they're having problems, learning difficulties, and that's what the teacher's role should be. And we'd like to expand. We want to see eLimu all over Africa, and we want to create local custom animations, animations that Kenyans and Africans can relate to. So I know everyone's probably familiar with this saying that, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. I don't know about that. I have a little bit of a spin on it. I'd say give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him how to fish, and feed him until the supply of fish holds out, but expose him to education technology, and he will learn several ways to feed himself and the people around him for the rest of his life. Thank you very much.